I'm Joshua Adams, and this is the Industry Insights Podcast, where I am joined in the Rock Paper Simple studio by community leaders as we dive into industry topics and perspectives. Thanks for joining us today. I have Amy Lyon with New Life Mission. She's the CEO, and she has recently taken over the reins of leadership at New Life Mission, though you've been there for quite a while now.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
Awesome.
5 years, almost 6 years.
Has it really been that long?
Yes,
so
it has.
I think about the same length I've been involved because I've been on the board for coming up on 6 years. So we've been right about the same time. I didn't realize it was so close in being involved. Look at that.
See how that works?
So Amy, we're going to talk about homelessness. We're talking about the cost that it puts on our communities, but also what can we do about it, right? I think it's one of those things. It's like, how do we solve this? And I think part of what we're going to talk today about is make it a little bit real.
Yes.
And talk about why it is maybe a deeper problem than some people even realize. So what's going on there and how it really the burden it puts on the community. But also what are the real life things we can do about it? But before we dive into that, I'd actually like to just talk a little bit about New Life Mission.
Yes.
What it's about, what you do there, why you're so passionate about it. It's frankly one of the couple boards that I've stayed on over the years that I have not, until I term out here soon. I'm not going anywhere.
Don't talk about that. We don't want you to go.
Oh, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
I'll still be around. But talk a little bit about New Life Mission and what we're doing.
Yeah. So New Life Mission is celebrating its 15th anniversary this year. So we've been in the community for 15 years, transforming the lives of homeless women with children. We are more than a shelter. So we're a program that moms with their children come, they can stay with us for 1 to 2 years, and we are completely transforming their lives through education, careers, and most importantly, they have a safe place to stay and think about what the future might look like for them.
I think one of the things that was most compelling for me when I was asked to join the board 6 years ago was the concept of the transformation. It isn't just let's give them something for today and for tomorrow. And there's a place for that, right? There's a place for caring for people, but there's this need for the long term, the transformation, the breaking the cycle. That was something we talked a lot about, was breaking the cycle of homelessness. Many of these women, this is a generational thing where they've been homeless for generations. And then what happens is they don't have the skills. They don't know how to do this. And so what are the high level, some of the categories that you guys are helping them along with that is causing that transformation? If you just hit the high level.
Yeah. The biggest one that we're seeing right now is mental health. So we've added in-house mental health counseling. And really when we can stabilize mental health for a woman and for children, they can start to think about what the future looks like. And then education. So they're getting jobs that are going to pay them a livable wage. So to educate them so they have their GED and can look to a job to support their family. Well, that takes a certificate, that takes skills, and we help them get those.
You also do a lot with financial literacy. You talk through helping them understand
finances.
Yes,
we have an on-site financial coach. So they're learning how to budget. It's probably their least favorite thing because there's a lot of emotion tied to money and what I've done with my money, the mistakes I've made, and oh my gosh, I don't want you to know my credit score. Or what is a credit score, honestly?
Right.
So,
and it can be a scary topic. I remember even just personal experience. I had some medical stuff when I, in my I would say my early 20s, and was very ashamed of what it did to my credit.
Yes.
It was awful. And it took a long time to build that back, but a lot of them don't even know where to begin. I didn't know where to begin. But certainly I've been able to turn that around over the years. So I think you guys help shed light into those areas. We've talked about, you've done cooking classes, you've done parenting classes, you have childcare now,
on site,
which is really awesome. I've heard some really awesome stories. So I think just establishing this desire to break that cycle was a lot of what New Life was about.
Yes, absolutely. So you think about, our mascot, I guess, if you will, our image is a butterfly. So we've got women who are kind of trapped in the cocoon state And so what we do is we come alongside them and, help them develop in there and then bust out
I
the
love that.
butterfly.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So with that in context, if
Mhm.
you will, moving into our topic, let's talk a bit about the cost of homelessness to our community. So you wanted to share some of that.
Yeah, there's, on just a really basic level, the cost of every human being deserves dignity and safe shelter and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you can't get those basic needs met, how do they move forward? So there's that. But then there's where it hits our pocketbooks. And I spent some time recently at the Brevard County Jail. That doesn't sound good,
Yeah.
but it was with the jail commander, and just really got into a lot of the women in our program have been in jail. So a lot of people who are homeless are in jail. So the cost for an inmate in the jail for one day is $79. So then they're in jail for a year. That's $30,000. The jail can house 1,600 inmates at a time. Now that's almost $130,000 per day. To, a lot of these people are homeless. So, and then we look at the schools. There's 820 children registered as homeless in Brevard County schools. So that program, Students in Transition, is $300,000. How are these things paid for? Well, taxpayer money. Hospitals, ER visits. Think about how if somebody is cold, they might even go to the ER for a place to stay. The jail shared that people, when it gets cold, will commit petty crimes. They'll shoplift to have a place to lay their head at night. This is a societal problem, and it does cost us all money.
Right. I think the point of that is to say, hey, if you think it doesn't affect you, it does. It affects every one of us in a lot of ways. Obviously, there's the very, very human element of what you're sharing here, and having the conversation of these are basic needs, right? That most of us take for granted. Most of us take for granted that we have a roof to sleep under every day, that we have a home to go to. That is not something that everyone has, and so you have that heaviness there already. But then for those that say, well, this doesn't impact me, it doesn't impact anybody I love, it doesn't impact
every one of us.
It impacts every one of us, whether or not you simply just understand, hey, I feel like I have a responsibility to my community, or you just understand this is costing a lot of taxpayer dollars. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
So heading towards that.
It's a big question.
What are some things we can do about it?
Yeah, well, the one thing, and people don't always like me when I say this, is don't give money to panhandlers. So that may seem mean, but it's a little bit selfish when we give money to someone on the side of the road, because a lot of times we're doing it to make ourselves feel good. But it's not getting to the root of the problem for them, and it's dangerous. For both people. It's dangerous for a motorist to stop at an intersection when someone's holding up a cardboard sign. So the alternative, for example, at New Life Mission, we have a resource card that we give out to our supporters, to the general public, that you can hand that to someone on the side of the road. If everyone stopped giving these individuals money, they would have to look elsewhere. So that's going to take an entire society to do that.
Understood. And so when you say, they're going to look elsewhere, help me understand that, right? So you're saying, okay, we're sustaining this over here by giving in this way. How is it better for them to go seek the resources like what you guys are doing?
There's trained professionals behind those organizations. And so we need to get to the actual problem. Is it mental illness? Is it addiction? Is it trauma in their pasts? Is it just financial? They can't afford to live here right now because the costs have skyrocketed. By having professionals help them, this is kind of a weird analogy that just came to me, but think about your vehicle. Clank, clank, clank. There's some noise happening. You're not a mechanic. So you might lift your hood and kind of look to see if you see something, but hopefully you would call your mechanic rather than Googling, there's a clank, clank, clank on the left side and getting 5,000 results. So if people are trying to help on their own by giving $5, $10, they need to direct these individuals to the experts who know how to help them. So, 211, if you call 211 from your cell phone, it's a directory in Brevard County of all the organizations trying to help individuals who are homeless. So there's more than 70 of them. So there's shelters for just men. There's organizations like ours that help women with children. There's places that will give money to help with rent or utilities. So the resources are here. I wish there were more. There could always be more. But we need to get these individuals to the resources and the people who are trained to help them.
So, Amy, I think we have often two lines of thinking that happen on two extremes, if you will, when it comes to homelessness. And I think a lot of people are somewhere in between these two, but you have the attitude of, well, they should just get a job. Like
that'll fix everything.
That'll fix everything if they would just get a job. And then you have the other side where you just want to consistently keep helping and giving money. And it's just very, very, very giving, which is, I think, coming from a good place. Honestly, I even think they just need to get a job most of the time is coming from hey, they need to do right by themselves. Yeah. I don't think either necessarily is always coming from a bad place, but you see those two extremes. And I think knowing you, I think that you would say both are wrong as far as both extremes.
Both are dangerous.
Both are dangerous. So dive into why is that dangerous thinking and help us understand the balance there.
For our moms and children, many times the reason they're in the situation they're in is it's generational. They were raised maybe by a mother who, for whatever she did, was in an abusive relationship. I think the same can be true for people looking at homelessness. They were brought up to believe that someone who's homeless should just get a job. They think of it as themselves, through the lens that they see life, where in their mind, they're educated. They maybe came from a 2-parent household. They went to college. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you go on. But we're not all made that way. So for someone who's homeless, we don't know their circumstances. It's also just not beneficial to hand them money. So the sweet spot is in the middle. And I really believe that it's professionals who are trained in helping individuals experiencing homelessness. There is a grace that they have, but there's also accountability and pushing gently. And the tendency with people who are homeless is that people have hurt them. And so there's not a lot of trust. There is the desire to flee any situation. And a lot of times when people come into our program, they haven't slowed down for years. And so they have a minute to just breathe. And that can be really scary for them because even though it's what we would call good and safe and better, it's still outside of their comfort zone. So it's different and it's scary. Sometimes they want to run back to the place where they hang out with drug dealers because they know what to expect there. They don't know what to expect in this new life. So that was kind of a long answer to your question, but just as there's people on the spectrum looking at homelessness, the people coming into our program are on a spectrum too.
Right. And I think it's perspective, right? It comes back to our perspective on things. We do tend to look at the world through our own lens, right? Mm-hmm. Through our upbringing, through our worldview, through our specific set of ideas, our idea of family, our idea of the community around us, our idea of ourselves.
How life should be.
Right. This is just how it's supposed to be. And it does make certain perspectives easier to take, if that makes sense. And I think when you're looking at homelessness, it's very hard if you haven't been through that to understand and to understand what and frankly, when you guys are approaching this every day, you don't know what you're walking into. You don't know what circumstance or background or challenges or all of these things, and a lot of it's untangling all of this. And so that approach is why I think you keep suggesting, hey, let us do this. Let bring people to us and let us work through this and help them through that.
Yeah. So when a woman calls us, there's a process she goes through. She, first of all, to make that phone call can be the hardest thing of her life because she's admitting that she needs help. And so we have an extensive interview process because, again, we're not a shelter, but there's drug testing, there's all of these things, and for her to now start being held accountable can be a really big challenge. So then when they're in our program, some of the things that they're learning are basic soft skills of just arriving places on time, keeping a calendar, staying organized. So we have women who have maybe gone through a divorce, and so they don't have any place to live, or we have women who've been through human trafficking. So speaking of a spectrum, and women who've come from addiction. So sometimes the person who presents themselves at the interview, as we get to know them, when they come into our program, it's like peeling an onion. We're getting these different layers, and we just walk through that with them.
So we've got all this stuff going on, all the complexities of this, a lot of kind of just digging deep into kind of some don'ts here. But what are some do's? What are some things we can do? And I'll specifically look at it from business standpoint. I own a business. A lot of our audience are business owners or professionals. So what can they do, right, in terms of affecting this in a positive way? And I know there's a spectrum of ways that they can, but what are some in your mind?
I think education is the biggest piece. I think first stopping and saying, yes, this is a problem in our community. It's a problem in every city across the country, especially with affordable housing. The chambers, the business communities could talk more openly about this. It's a hard conversation. We kind of want to turn and say, that's somebody else's problem. Absolutely, there are professionals, but we need the business community to join with us and become educated. And we're happy to educate them.
So starting with education, okay. So and why, again, I will get educated now. I know now what, right? What does that affect? What changes does that affect in a business owner, right? So I can go and seek out knowledge. I can go and sit down with you and have lunch. They help me understand this. But then hopefully, what are you hoping to see different happening in the community?
That maybe there isn't so much fear about those people, that we see that they are our people and that we are called.
I love that.
To walk with them. Even if we don't know how, we can find the people that do know how. And I'm not saying that you go out and spend hours counseling, or I actually wouldn't advise counseling, but even taking a minute, if you're a business owner and you have a storefront and someone's panhandling outside your business, rather than just yelling at them, get out of here. Just saying, hey man, what are you doing out here? What are you looking for? Do you need help? Most people aren't asked, do you need help? Hey, what's your name? That can go along. Nobody asks their name. They're the homeless guy that lives down the street. Rather than just calling the police, because when you call the police, there's a trespassing complaint, an officer comes out, $33 an hour. And if the individual who's homeless gets upset, now there's a potential for an arrest. That's more than one officer, $33 an hour. It takes multiple hours. They go to jail. There's booking fees. There's all those, inmate fees. If this person has a history of violence or anything, well, they might freak out and run. And now we've got officers with a canine dog and aviation and everything else. And I know that sounds extreme, but it happens. So we can have a conversation.
So I think what you're saying is, hey, instead of coming out and say, hey, get out of here, or calling the cops, or et cetera, it's kind of saying, hey, it's that connection. It's a human connection. But I even heard you say, hey, do you need help? But I think that's where we get stuck. Okay, well, how can I help? And it comes back to what you said earlier about knowing the options around town, right? And I think that's maybe an important connection here, is know what the resources are so that you can send people there, right? And so if I want to help and I ask them, hey, what do you need? When they answer, it would be great if I had a response, right? It'd be great if I
Yes.
said, well, I know where I can send you. Here's that resource card that New Life Mission gave me. Here's that resource, call 211 right there with them. I've heard of people who've done that and just, hey, right now, what is it that you need, and make the phone call. And so I think those are kinds of steps that can be taken when you say, hey, a business should educate themselves to be able to know where to send people. Otherwise, I've literally had, I've been approached and I said, well, what do you need? And it was actually a gentleman who was looking for a place for him and his daughter. He was homeless, right? And I had the conversation. I actually didn't know where to send him. And I made a phone call. And it was actually quite a while ago. It was somebody over at New Life Mission. I called and just said, hey, where do I send this guy? And he waited until I had an answer. And once I found a place, I wrote the address down and I gave it to him. And that was more helpful than saying, here's $10, right? That was more helpful than get out of the front of this restaurant that I'm trying to go into, which was, he was standing out in front of this restaurant, nice restaurant. And I
Yeah.
was headed in with some family, et cetera. And I stopped and said, I'll be right in, and had the conversation with him. Now in this case, he asked for help. He asked for help. But I dug a little deeper. It wasn't just, okay, here's $10, leave me alone.
You
Right?
took the time.
Took a moment. And again, I don't know if I would have known to do that had I not
Mm.
been involved in New Life and understood maybe some deeper aspects to it. But I was able to find somewhere that would talk to him and would provide help with what he was looking for. Obviously, New Life Mission wasn't right for him, right? Because we serve women with children.
Yes.
But that was fine because I was able to call you guys and say, hey, where do I send him? And I was able to get some answers on that. And so that was a very simple way. I spent 10 minutes maybe, right? I mean, I was 10 minutes late to dinner but they were fine. They ordered some apps. It's so simple.
How did you
to do that.
feel after doing that?
Oh, I felt great.
Yeah.
I felt great. And frankly, it was a better feeling even than when you say, hey, here's a few bucks, to buy a meal or whatever.
Because you were actually part of a solution.
Correct.
A
long-term solution. And when you help in that way, you're pushing them in a path, I think, of transformation, like you said, right? So it's funny when you have that dialogue of, should I give $10 here? Should I give a gift card? And some people say, no, never give cash because they're buying bad stuff with it.
Yep.
Some people are like, give a gift card. Well, they can just sell the gift card, so there's some arguments there. And I'm not opposed to, I've absolutely walked people in a restaurant and bought them food before, right? That I think there's a time and place for that.
Yeah.
I remember a time we were starting church service back when I was a youth pastor, and this guy walked in and was hungry, right? And it was like, what do we do, right? And the pastor and I looked at each other and kind of had that moment. And okay, and I took him to McDonald's, bought him some food, said, here's where you need, here's where you need to go. I was much less educated back then on where to send people.
Well, and in that situation, if it's safe, you're now feeding them where they can actually stop for a minute. You're connecting, you're breaking bread.
Right.
You're
right. And we
connecting
had a conversation
over food.
We had a conversation, and nothing ever came of it after that. That was it. But I think those things are more meaningful. And I think you find them more, I have found them more meaningful as well. But that example with the gentleman going into the restaurant was probably the best one I could find of what you're explaining, of what you're saying. And so I think if we really care, if we really care, I think we'll spend a few extra minutes to say, where can I send them? How can I affect more change than just keeping them where they're at?
Yes.
Right. Because that's all that $10 is doing, is keeping them where they're at.
Well, it's enabling them actually to stay in their situations. And there is a reality, and I think we just need to put this out there, that not everybody on the side of the road asking for money, holding a sign that says I'm homeless, is really homeless. So, I mean, that's
so then who are you helping? And absolutely. Absolutely. And I really like the idea of saying, let me do something that's long lasting. It's one of the reasons I joined the board at New Life Mission, because It was Life Johnson who originally reached out to me and says, "Hey, I think you'll want to be involved with this." And we sat down, talked about it, and I just love the concept of making a difference in a long term, right? And so I just want to kind of reiterate where you're coming from with that. That I can really resonate with that. I've experienced it. I wish I took more time to do it. Right, as I'm saying this, I'm thinking I'm realizing there's some recent opportunities I maybe walked by that I didn't do this, right? So it's even convicting me of going, man, I need to maybe even be better at this, where I see that and say, and have that connection.
But you're human. And the reality is we are all busy.
Mm.
And it really, the education piece. And I would love to never in my life hear people say again, it's not my problem. Because if you pay taxes, if you live on this planet, it's an issue. Maybe it is a problem, but it's an issue that together, when we bring people together, and I know that sounds sort of Pollyanna-ish, like let's all just come together, but we do need to come together. It takes everybody to do it.
Well, thank you, Amy, for spending some time with me talking about this very sensitive subject, really.
Absolutely. Is anytime I can talk about what we do and how people can help and give them the tools to be part of the solution, that's why I'm here.
Awesome. So if somebody wanted to reach out and learn more, where do they go?
Well, they can go to newlife-mission.org. We have our resource card available there, and that's for the whole community, men, women, children, youth aging out of foster care, whatever you can think of. So we want to be a resource for the community as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Industry Insights. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe, comment, or even drop us a line over at rockpapersimple.com.